Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Lighthouse Explorers podcast. Today I'm joined by Ed Peppitt, who rode around 327 lighthouses in England and Wales to raise money for Shift.ms. His story is extremely inspirational and I loved speaking with him. It's a very heartwarming conversation and I'm really excited for you to listen to it. So without further ado, let's take it over to Past Me and Ed Peppitt.
My love of lighthouses goes back to childhood. I was born on the south coast, and every school and family holiday was spent mainly at my grandmother's house, which was on the coast near Dungeness. And the light from Dungeness Lighthouse used to flash against my bedroom wall each night. I had the little bedroom up in the eaves, in the roof, and had this little mullion window. And every 10 seconds, my bedroom wall would just give a little flashing glow, and I just found that magical. And so there began, aged, 6, 7, 8, a sort of passion for lighthouses. And it didn't take very long. We always used to spend longer family holidays somewhere on the coast, somewhere in Devon or the North Yorkshire coast. And I would often spy out the nearest lighthouses whenever I was on holiday. And so lighthouses became a passion. And I think by age 10, 11, 12, I just conjured up this idea of one day getting on my bicycle, which at the age I was then was the only mode of transport I had, getting on my bike, cycling round the coast, and ticking off, if you like. Yeah, I think people call it bagging these days, don't they? But just ticking off every lighthouse around the coast and go and see every lighthouse. And it was always a journey that I had in my head that one day I would do. And like so many childhood dreams, life got in the way. You know, I finished school, I went to university, I got a job. I met my partner, we got married, we had 3 children. 25 years shot by, and I still hadn't done this trip. And I'd sort of resigned myself to, well, maybe it's not going to happen, or maybe I'll do it in a different way when I'm retired or something. But it remained undone. And then 8 or 9 years ago, I became quite poorly, had all sorts of strange symptoms. Funnily enough, the first one was I went blind in my left eye, which was pretty scary. Long story short, loads of tests, and eventually diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And I was given various drugs that are meant to sort of suppress the symptoms and keep worse symptoms at bay. And they did do some good, and I enjoyed a period of relative health. And I think that period of relative health just made me think, well, if not now, then when? This might be my last hurrah, if you like. And so I got permission from my wife to take 100 and something days off work and spend quite a lot of the family money. And within a matter of a few weeks, really, from making the decision, I got on my bike and set off from home, clockwise. Dungeness was my first lighthouse, and Dungeness was my last lighthouse. And I couldn't incorporate Scotland as well, but I did England, Wales, the Channel Islands, the Isle of Wight, Bardsey Island, the Scilly Isles. Did I say the Channel Islands? I can't remember. So I did England, Wales, and all the islands, and took boats offshore to get to the offshore lighthouses, and my trusty bike to reach the ones on the mainland. And so that was what spurred me on. And how did I feel before I set off? Nervous, not hugely willing to tell lots of people I was doing it at the early stages, because I hadn't actually ridden a bike for 20 years before I set off, and certainly not one full of with panniers full of kit. And so, although I decided to do it, I didn't know whether I'd give up exhausted after 2 or 3 days, or how far I'd get. I remember on day 5 or 6 reaching Portsmouth and thinking, that's incredible, because that I suppose was about 90 miles from here, and that seemed like the greatest achievement of my life. And so each day that carried on after that, I suddenly felt more and more confident that perhaps I could do this. And so I kept going, and then some of the sort of publicity kicked in because I was more confident of letting people know I was doing it. But how did I feel? It felt like a very foolhardy exercise that I didn't have much confidence that I would complete.
Yeah, it's quite incredible that you hadn't been on a bike for 20 years. You didn't want to do any training beforehand. You just wanted to get on your bike and go for it.
Well, I think what it was we had 3 children, and I didn't want to be away for the whole of the summer vacation that they were off school. So I was having this idea in sort of January, February, and I reckoned that the latest I could start, if I was going to start that year, was say May, beginning of May. So I only had 3 months maximum. I didn't own a bicycle. That's a slight exaggeration. I had a very rusty bicycle in the shed with a broken chain and buckled wheels, and unrideable. But I had 12 weeks to sort of find a bicycle. A friend of mine managed to introduce me to a wonderful bicycle company called Thorn, who built me a bike. But they took 8 weeks doing it. And then I needed panniers, and I needed, the bicycle arrived, and I thought I would have 5 days to train before I set off. But the bicycle arrived without a saddle because, weirdly, Thorn bicycles don't come with saddles unless you specify one. And so by the time I was there with panniers and saddles and things, it was the Saturday. It was the Friday or the Saturday before I set off on the Monday. So training was somewhat limited. But I wasn't very fit. I'm not very fit again now, and I don't actually know what help training would have done. I'm not sure it would have put me in that much of a better position.
I think we're also bike twins in a way. Your bike from Thorn is bright yellow, isn't it?
It is.
It is. I also have a bright yellow bike that I go to lighthouses on.
Well, we really should arrange to meet up at a lighthouse at the same time on our bikes, in which case.
It's beautiful, and it must have made you stand out a little bit more if people were wondering which one was the crazy lighthouse man.
It really did. Yes, absolutely. And I was very, very lucky. I mean, day 4, I think I got my first puncture on the Isle of Wight.
Mm.
And I was a long way from I mean, you can't be that far away from civilization on the Isle of Wight, but I was a good sort of 2.5 miles from a town, and I had to push the bicycle into this town. And I found a bike shop, and straight away they said, "You're not cycling around visiting lighthouses, are you?" And that was very. I wasn't expecting that at all, but I hadn't really publicised the trip at that stage, and so it was very welcome. Yes, but I was very recognisable. Yes, absolutely right. So this was white cycles right in the middle of the island. Yeah, they were lovely, and bless them. They took one look at me because it was also raining that day. They took one look at me with my pathetic puncture and my rather sort of bedraggled look, and they serviced my brakes, changed my tyre, changed my inner tube, got me going, gave me a cup of coffee, and didn't charge me a penny. So that was lovely. Yeah, it was really nice.
On this trip, there were times when it got extremely difficult.
Yes.
I thought that the way you wrote about it in the book was, really beautiful, and it's good to cover those aspects of the trip as well, because it's more motivational, I think, to know that people have faced these difficult times and kept going. What kept you from going and not just saying, "Ugh, I've gone far enough, it's still an achievement, I can just go back home on a train"?
That's a very good question. So what we're talking about here is coinciding with MS. A lot of people suffer from low mood and depression and so on. And yeah, there were 3 or 4 occasions where I think you could sort of term them breakdowns. Certainly on the sort of North Welsh coast, I got very, very, very close to quitting. I think what kept me going was I was gathering quite a decent crowd of followers on Facebook and Twitter as it was. And every time I was not in a good place, Emily, my wife, would post on my behalf and saying, he needs a bit of encouragement. And I would cycle for 10 miles, stop, turn on my phone and find that there were 120 messages of, you've got to keep going, you've got to do this, you can't give up now. And that really helped. And then also, I'm such a good starter of things and such a bad finisher of things that I wanted something in my life to have started and finished. And just the knowledge that I wanted to finish did keep me going. And then the third thing is there are some remarkable people in this country. We may not be in a particularly happy place in this country at the moment, and there may be all sorts of black and white views about all sorts of topics. But there are some incredible people. And I found, for example, guest house owners around the coast who would sense that something wasn't quite right with me and would just look after me, basically. I mean, I'm thinking in particular of a wonderful bed and breakfast called T. Helig in St. David's, where the owner's lovely couple, they sensed that I had just not given up exactly at that stage, but they sensed that if they didn't help, nothing was going to happen, and probably the journey would come to an end. So they were phoning boatmen and weathermen and working out bus routes, and pretty much I was stuck at St. David's because the tides were awful and the storms made the water very choppy, and I needed to get out to Smalls Lighthouse. That was one of my biggies to tick off. And St. David's is quite an expensive place to stay at the best of times, but I was effectively stuck in St. David's, spending money, not moving, not able to get out to St. David's. And I really didn't know what to do. And I think in a different frame of mind, I would have been quite creative and thought to come up with a plan and so on. But I couldn't really do anything. So my guest house owners sort of took over, and they organised for me a bus route further north. And they suggested that I got on my bike and carried on and forgot Smalls. And then the first day the boat was running again, they worked out that if I'd got as far as this particular town, I could jump on the bus here. If I got as far as Aberystwyth, I could jump on the bus there. And so that's absolutely what happened. I continued on to Aberdaron, I think it was. Then discovered that the boat was back on for the next day. So I left my bike in a pub cellar in the town and jumped on a bus all the way back to St. David's. They were there to meet me off the bus and drove me straight down to the boat. And I think people like that make it easier not to give up. You sort of suddenly feel, well, you kind of owe them as well as as well as yourself to keep going. So, yeah, there were difficult times, and I'm talking too much, but there were lots of reasons to spur me on. I think the final one is my brother William, who's a great solver of problems, who phoned me up when I was extremely low and said he could be with me in 3 hours and he'd take me home and I'd be home by midnight. And I just thought, no, I don't want to be home by midnight. However bad things are, I'm happy where I am, or happier where I am.
Yeah, it's lovely to hear. I think something that stuck out to me on a lot of my lighthouse trips as well when things have gone south is that at their core, people want to help. People do want to give back to other people. They don't expect anything in return because it makes them feel good. They want to help you get from A to B. And I've had that multiple times. On a recent trip to Ireland, a German couple pulled over their motorhome because they saw that my bike was not going anywhere. And the pannier rack had broken, it jumped into the gears. He helped, taped it all up, and it lasted for the rest of the trip. Otherwise, I
Amazing.
had to go home there. So on this trip, I'm imagining you saw a lot of lighthouses you hadn't seen before. Obviously, the smallest lighthouse. I'm very jealous that you've managed to go out to that. Do you have a new favorite lighthouse? Something else I have to ask at least once.
Oh, of course, absolutely. Even a lighthouse enthusiast talking to another lighthouse enthusiast has to ask about favourite lighthouses. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I do think Smalls was probably it, partly because it took such an effort to get there that when I eventually got out, it felt like a magnificent achievement. I mean, as I do, that it's the furthest offshore of any of the English and Welsh lights. It's 21 and a bit miles off the Pembrokeshire coast. So it's a long old haul. And when we eventually got out there, I was on a boat with 4 or 5 other people. The water was like a mill pond. I mean, it was so flat and so still and so calm that the echoes of our voices, just from being in the sort of shadow of the tower, was one of the most extraordinary experiences I can't describe it. It was magical, it was beautiful, it was still, it was silent, and here was this magnificent tall tower with, so many legendary stories about that I never thought. Well, I had come to believe that I wouldn't reach. And so when I did, I think it's felt very, very magical. So I would put that right up there with my favourites. I also always say to my fellow lighthouse enthusiasts that my favourite lighthouse is the Bridport Chantry. And the reason I say it's the Bridport Chantry is that while I was cycling the Dorset coast, I stayed in a pub where there happened to be a local news article that speculated that this very beautiful but not particularly striking building in Bridport may once have served as a lighthouse. And so the following day I cycled into Bridport to take a look at it, and it didn't look anything like a lighthouse to me. It shared very little characteristics of a lighthouse. But just to irritate, particularly the Association of Lighthouse Keeper members who are also bagging lighthouses, I always add Bridport Chantry to my list of favourite lighthouses because I know they won't have seen it themselves.
Yeah, so in the same thread, outside of King's Cross Station, in a very similar vein of a lighthouse, which isn't quite a lighthouse, there's a lighthouse-looking structure on top of a block of offices, which has a Five Guys underneath it. And originally there was an oyster shop there, and they think that they built this lighthouse to promote their oyster shop.
Oh,
Maybe
wow.
made it there. You could add that to the list of lighthouses to annoy other ALK members.
Well, I'm absolutely. I mean, I'm in London one day next week. I shall go via King's Cross and take a look. Fantastic.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend going to the Five Guys underneath, but
I'll tick the lighthouse off and eat somewhere else.
After you got past the halfway point, how are you feeling about the trip? Did it start to feel much easier because you knew that the end was in sight?
So the first time I actually was confident that I was going to make it, no matter what else was thrown at me, and confident each day subsequently, was the day I crossed the country from the west coast to the east coast, so from Silloth and Carlisle over to Berwick, because technically every mile I cycled from Berwick, I was a mile closer to home. Not 100% accurate, but pretty much each mile was getting me closer to home. Whereas even 3 or 4 days before, the the Cumbrian coast is a bloody long way away. And it felt, by the time I got to Carlisle, I did feel like I was a long way from home. And there's some wonderful towns, Whitehaven, Maryport. There are some really nice places. But each of these towns seemed very sort of alien to me. I'd never seen them before. And each day of cycling, I was getting further and further and further away from home. So from Berwick onwards, I got a sort of new lease of life. And and in fact, they were the fastest miles. I mean, yes, I was fitter, but they were some of the fastest miles I'd achieved all trip. And I sort of thought of it as a journey of 3/3. You know, Dungeness to Penzance, Penzance up to Carlisle, and then Berwick back home again. And in fact, the longest stretch, I think, was the west coast, up the west coast, and then coming from Berwick back home seemed to take 2.5 weeks. You know, or it was a bit more than that. I think it might have been 3.5 weeks. But by comparison with the other two stretches, it was massively faster, and I was in a different frame of mind then. That's certainly true.
Mm. Yeah, the thing about going to see all these lighthouses on the coast is it's not the most efficient way of traveling. Always at the tippy points of the land for some ungodly reason.
Yeah, there is one stretch of National Cycle Route 1 which follows the side of the A1 for about 10 miles. And I think apart from that, yeah, there wasn't a straight road I cycled on for 104 days or whatever.
Yeah, I did Ireland recently,
Right.
and we went out to Loop Head Lighthouse, and it was ungodly. And my partner came with me, and he was incredulous, really, that we decided to go out all of this way. We were both being pushed backwards a bit as well.
Well, I mean, that's something that I guess the only cycling I'd done was in London when I cycled to work all those years before. But that was something that I just hadn't really sort of fathomed would happen. Wind so strong where no matter how fast you pedal, you don't actually move forward. I had several of those on the trip, and I wasn't really prepared for those at all. I mean, I spent an awful lot of time off the bike pushing it.
That and the hills become extremely difficult when, yeah, especially in poor weather. How
Yeah.
was the weather for the majority of your trip? What time of year did you do it in?
So I set off in May and got back in August, and there was probably 1 week of torrential rain and 11 or 12 weeks of absolutely great weather. Windy, but not rainy, and reasonably clear skies. And there was 10 days when I was in northwest Wales when it was heat wave. Yeah, I mean, very uncomfortable cycling indeed. Um, but I was by North Wales, I was noticeably fitter than I had been when I set off. And if each day of cycling didn't scare me. I mean, I remember getting to Brighton on night 2 and just thinking my legs will never unfold again. They just felt horrendous. But no, by West Wales, I was pretty fit.
Yeah, it's amazing how much the body adjusts just by pure force.
Absolutely. I mean, the first month, I think the most I did in a day was about 35 miles, and that felt like a long way. Coming down the East Coast in the last 3 weeks, I think I did 3 80-mile days. And I mean, yeah, of course, I was exhausted at the end of them, but comparatively felt good about it.
Yeah, I also we have another similarity, and I also appreciated that a lot of your cycling days ended with a pint in the pub.
Yes, I mean, I did find it was a really good opportunity to sample craft beers and bitters from regional breweries around the coast, and there were lots that I was already familiar with, but I discovered some wonderful beers I mean, it's been quite costly. There have been 2 or 3 occasions where I've phoned breweries around the country and had 16-pint kegs delivered overnight because I just think, well, I've got a friend coming for the weekend. I just fancy a taste of that. So, I mean, in Suffolk, I still do love Adnams, but Woodford's is my new favourite brewery, and I should probably open an account with them because they've sent me beer several times over the last few months.
I wouldn't let Adams hear you say that. They could buy you from the lighthouse.
Well, this is true because they run it now, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
I'm very fond of Adnams as well.
On the record. Did they run the tours when you did this trip?
Not only did they not run the tours, but when I did the trip, Southwold was completely encased in scaffolding and was being repainted. So, I mean, I had been to Southwold Lighthouse before, so it wasn't like I was missing something that I would never see again or had never seen. But on that particular day, no, there wasn't a lot to see at Southwold on the particular day I cycled past. But as I say, I've been there before and I've been there since, and it is one of the most beautiful lighthouses, isn't it, around the coast?
It's so charming.
It is.
I don't think there are many lighthouses that can rival it in the charming category.
No, I think you're right.
We're coming round to the end of your trip. You obviously had a lovely homecoming at Dungeness. What did you know about the homecoming? Had you talked about? Was it your wife that was organizing?
Yeah, yes. So Emily organised it, and a lot of people had sort of waved me off, but I at the start of the trip. But I really didn't know what, if anything, to expect at the end. I knew my friend who became my sort of wingman on the trip, who delivered various stores and supplies to me at various points. I knew he was going to be there, and I knew my parents would be there, and wife and children, but I didn't know who else. And it was fabulous because there were probably, I don't know, 50 or 60 people there, including friends, clients, publishing friends, book shopping friends, cycling friends, friends from, other parents from my kids' schools, cricket friends. Yeah, it was lovely. It was lovely. I've got a lovely little piece of footage of me literally cycling the last 25 yards and cycling up to this group of people who'd come out. And I was only glad I was on time because I sort of reckoned I'd be back at Dungeness by about 1 o'clock, and I think I strolled in about 20 past, which was well timed. But yeah, no, it was good. It was good, but I wasn't expecting it. No.
What a lovely way to end the trip, though. After all of the heartache as well, it's nice to have a big celebration to really mark the accomplishment.
It was great, and my brother had become a trustee of the charity the MS charity that I was raising money for, and so they made a little speech of how useful the money I'd raised would prove, which was great. The only sad thing about my homecoming is my wonderful, he's not with us anymore, but my wonderful Labrador Willow was so furious that I'd been away that he just ignored me when I got home. I wouldn't have anything to do with me at all for the first couple of days that I was home.
Oh no,
It's tragic. But yeah, it was fabulous it all became real. It was I'd circumnavigated the coast, and that felt amazing.
No, thank you so much for talking to me about it. I've wanted to talk to you for a while. It is an inspirational trip, and you're a very inspirational character, and you can also feel the warmth, I think, through reading your book.
Well, that's really kind of you to say that. I mean, I wanted the book to be more than just a book about lighthouses, so I'm over the moon that you felt I got some of that sort of character and personality into the text, and I'm so pleased you enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the podcast. If you liked it, leave a comment, and you can check out Ed Peppitt over on social media and tell him congratulations or purchase his book. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you soon for the next episode of Lighthouse Explorers.